In this video, I'm going to show you 4 practical examples of how to use the XLOOKUP. They are very interesting and very important. Please stick with me. In the first example, I want to find the last value that matches. When you look at this data set of months and sales, you'll observe that there are 2 rows that are repeated here with different values. So instead of getting this January, I want to get the value of this. If you do the XLOOKUP the normal way and say XLOOKUP, I look up January. Where do I look up January? In this range. When I find it, where should I select the value to return? I do like that. So when I do that, you'll see that it returns this. But I'm not interested in this. I'm interested in the last month for January. So to get the last month value for January, all you have to do is go into this XLOOKUP formula and put commas. So there are different options there. The first option is what will be returned if the value is not found. Put a space. What kind of match do you want? I want an exact match, comma, then the search mode. You have to put here minus. If you put 1, let's first put 1 and see what happens. Now 1 starts searching from the top to the bottom, and the first value it gets for January is this. However, if you want it to search from bottom to up, you come and change this 1 to -1. When you do that, it is going to search from the bottom to the top, and the first value it comes across for January will be the 400. In the next practical example, I want to calculate, given a certain level of income, I want XLOOKUP to go here in this data set which has low and high and determine what rate I use based on the income I have. For example, if my income is 15K, it needs to see 15K lies between these two and then return the 25. And when it returns the 25, it places it here, and I use the formula of my income times the rate that has been returned by the XLOOKUP to get what should be paid. I'm going to use the XLOOKUP, and I want to look up this 15K. I'm going to use the upper limit, and when I find it, return a tax rate. So if I stop there, it is going to return NA because by default, it is looking for an exact match. And 15K is not among these figures. So what I want to happen is that if it comes and looks for 15K, and 15K is between this and this, 10K and 20K, it will go for the next upper value and then get the range corresponding to that next upper value. So to achieve that, we need to add different options. If it's not found, return nothing. Our match mode is going to be 1. So when we do that, it looks for the next upper value. So it is between this and this, but because 15K is not there, it will go for the next up one, then pick the rate. The other alternative to do it is look for the lower value. So if I put -1, you're going to see that it earns 10%, and the 10% relates to the lower value. So 15K is between 10K and 20K, but it takes the lower value and returns 10%. If we want to use the lower value, then we need to change our XLOOKUP so that instead of looking up for values here in the high end, it needs to look up values in column C. And to do that, our lookup range from C to C. And when we do that, you'll find that it returns the same as before. So what happens in our next example here is that it comes and finds 15K lies between this 10K and 1 and 20K and 1, then it returns the lower value, and the lower value is 25%. So you can either decide to go by the lower values, search by the lower values. In that case, you look for the next lower value, or you can search for the upper value, and then you look for the next upper value, which you use to locate the tax rate. The next example is the nested XLOOKUP or the two-way lookup. What do I mean? I want to come here and say Q4, Q2, and Q2 is right here. Then also, the first lookup will look up Q2 figures, and the next lookup will come here and look up for gross profit. Where the two merge is the value it returns, and we'll also do the same for the net profit. Where it meets, it will be the value it returns. So there are two lookups that we have to do. The first lookup I'm gonna do, which will be looking up the quarter. Where do we look up the quarter? In that range. And when we find it, we want data to be returned from the range below. Now, when you do this, you're going to find that it's going to return Q2 figures right there. Now, having got these Q2 figures and also using the range that I have here, the next XLOOKUP come in and looking for the profit, gross profit, and when it gets the gross profit, it will look up the results from the first XLOOKUP, return the results in the first XLOOKUP. Okay, so that's why this first XLOOKUP is nested into this other lookup, which looks for the gross profit. You have not understood what I've said, but let's show it practically right here. So what am I gonna do? I'm going to say, okay, XLOOKUP, first look up the quarter, look up this quarter. Where am I looking up the quarter? In this range, comma, when I find it, I want results from that entire range. So when I do that, you'll see that Q2 figures I returned. So using these Q2 figures, they are going to be my return figures when I look up my gross profit. To do that, I'm going to cut this, Control X, then I do XLOOKUP. So now what am I looking up? I'm looking up the gross profit, which is in this cell, comma. Where do I look up the gross profit? In this range. When I find it, I want to return the results in my first XLOOKUP. I'll pick from the results of my first XLOOKUP. So when I do that, you see that Q2 is 25. Q2 is 25,000. So I'll do the same for the profit. So I'll say XLOOKUP, look up the net profit. Where do I look it up? I look it up in this range, comma. My results will be from Q2. I will look up from results of Q2. And to get that, I'll do another XLOOKUP, look up Q2 in this range. And when I find it, return me values in right there. Close the inside XLOOKUP, close the outside XLOOKUP, and say OK. So you can see Q2 is 25 and 3, 25 and 3. If I change this one to Q4, I'll get 35 and 19. Q4 is right here, 35 and 19. So this is how you use the nested XLOOKUP. Example number 4. So I have a data set here of months and sales, and I want to find totals based on what I'm selected here. The start month is January. I can say January to maybe March, for example. Then it gives me the sum from January to March as 15 to 2. When I come here, January to March, if you add these two, you can see you get 1522. And I'm going to use the XLOOKUP. So I'm going to use the XLOOKUP to get the ranges for where it starts to sum and where it ends summing. So I say, I'm going to sum, and I want to sum from. To sum from, I'm using the XLOOKUP to get me where it is supposed to start. So I say XLOOKUP, the start month is January, comma, where do I look up January? I look up January in these months, comma, the reference it should return for January should come from this range. Close that. Then in double quotes. So this will be like my C3. This result will give me my C3. So to get the next where it ends, which is March, to get my C5, I'm going to use another XLOOKUP, and I say, what are you looking up? Looking up the end, comma, in the range of the months. That's where I'm looking it up. And when I find it, I return the reference from my sales column. So I close that XLOOKUP, then I close the sum. So when I do that, I press, you get that if you're summing from January to March, both months inclusive, you get 15 to 2. So if you do a quick check here and you say sum January to March, you will get that. So if I say January to Feb, I'll get 10, 0, 27. So I can stop, remove January to March, sorry. So it will be January, then Feb, you get 10, 27, which is 27. So it is very dynamic. You can move from March to June, and it is 1874, which is up to here, which comes to 1874. Thank you for watching. If you have liked this video, please subscribe. If you have not, hit the like button, and also consider hit the notification button to alert you for more videos like this. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.